Welcome to another episode of our deep dive into the world of equity jurisprudence. Today, we will explore the intriguing topic of non-military jurisdiction in equity. This area of law, often overlooked, holds significant importance in the administration of justice outside the purview of military influence. By the end of this episode, you'll have a thorough understanding of how equity operates in these jurisdictions, the challenges it faces, and the unique remedies it offers. Segment 1. Understanding non-military jurisdictions. To appreciate the role of equity in non-military jurisdictions, we must first clarify what is meant by non-military jurisdiction. In its simplest form, a non-military jurisdiction refers to the legal authority exercised in civil, as opposed to military matters. This distinction is crucial because the principles guiding the administration of justice in civilian courts differ significantly from those in military tribunals. In a non-military jurisdiction, the courts operate under the assumption that the individuals involved are civilians and not subject to the rules of military law. These courts adjudicate cases ranging from contractual disputes to property rights, with a focus on ensuring fairness, justice, and adherence to the rule of law. Equity, as a branch of law, becomes particularly relevant in these settings when the rigid application of common law principles might result in injustice. Historically, non-military jurisdictions have been the primary arena where equity has flourished. The absence of military influence allows for a more flexible and nuanced approach to justice, which is at the heart of equity jurisprudence. Equity courts, or courts of chancery, were established to provide remedies that the common law courts could not, such as injunctions, specific performance, and equitable estoppel. However, the application of equity in non-military jurisdictions is not without its challenges. The delicate balance between legal certainty and equitable discretion often tests the boundaries of judicial authority. As we delve deeper into this topic, we will examine how equity is applied in non-military settings, the unique remedies it offers, and the jurisdictional challenges that arise. Segment 2. Equitable remedies in non-military jurisdictions. Equity's primary function in non-military jurisdictions is to provide remedies where the strict application of law would lead to unfair or unjust outcomes. These remedies are designed to ensure that justice is done in a way that adheres to the spirit rather than just the letter of the law. Let us now explore some of the key equitable remedies that play a crucial role in non-military jurisdictions. Injunctions. One of the most powerful tools in equity is the injunction. An injunction is a court order that either restrains a party from doing something, prohibitory injunction, or compels them to do something, mandatory injunction. In non-military jurisdictions, injunctions are often used to prevent irreparable harm that cannot be adequately compensated by monetary damages. For example, in cases involving property disputes, an injunction may be granted to prevent the sale or development of a property until the legal issues are resolved. This ensures that the parties' rights are protected while the court determines the rightful owner. The flexible nature of injunctions makes them particularly suited to the complexities of non-military jurisdictions, where legal disputes can be multifaceted and require tailored solutions. Specific performance. Specific performance is another vital remedy in equity, particularly in contract law. In non-military jurisdictions, where commercial and property transactions are common, specific performance can be essential in ensuring that parties fulfill their contractual obligations. Unlike monetary damages, which merely compensate for a breach, specific performance compels a party to perform their part of the bargain. Consider a case where a seller refuses to transfer a property despite having received full payment. A court in a non-military jurisdiction may order specific performance, compelling the seller to complete the transaction. This remedy is especially important in situations where the subject matter of the contract is unique, such as in the sale of real estate or rare goods, where monetary compensation would be inadequate. Equitable estoppel. Equitable estoppel is a doctrine that prevents a party from taking unfair advantage of another by asserting something contrary to what they previously represented. In non-military jurisdictions, this remedy is crucial in ensuring that parties cannot act in bad faith to the detriment of others. For example, if a landlord assures a tenant that they will not enforce a lease provision requiring early termination of the lease, and the tenant relies on this assurance to their detriment, the landlord may be estopped from later enforcing that provision. This remedy upholds the principles of fairness and justice that are central to equity jurisprudence. Constructive trusts. A constructive trust is an equitable remedy imposed by a court to address unjust enrichment. In non-military jurisdictions, constructive trusts are often used in situations where one party has wrongfully obtained or retained property at the expense of another. The court may declare that the wrongdoer holds the property in trust for the rightful owner, effectively transferring the property back to the rightful party. This remedy is particularly useful in cases involving fraud, breach of fiduciary duty or mistake. For instance, if a person fraudulently induces another to transfer property to them, a court may impose a constructive trust, requiring the fraudulent party to return the property. The use of constructive trusts in non-military jurisdictions ensures that justice is served by preventing unjust enrichment and restoring the status quo. Segment 3. Jurisdictional challenges in equity. While equity provides powerful remedies in non-military jurisdictions, the application of these remedies is not without challenges. One of the primary challenges is the issue of jurisdiction, determining which court has the authority to hear a case and grant equitable relief. Concurrent jurisdiction. In many legal systems, both law and equity are administered by the same courts. This concept, known as concurrent jurisdiction, allows courts to apply either legal or equitable principles depending on the nature of the case. However, this can lead to complexities, particularly in non-military jurisdictions where the distinction between legal and equitable remedies must be carefully navigated. For instance, a court may need to decide whether a case should be resolved through legal remedies, such as damages, or equitable remedies, such as specific performance or an injunction. The decision often hinges on the nature of the rights involved and the adequacy of legal remedies. This challenge requires judges to have a deep understanding of both legal and equitable principles, as well as the ability to apply them appropriately. Equitable discretion. Another challenge in non-military jurisdictions is the exercise of equitable discretion. Unlike legal remedies, which are often rigid and formulaic, equitable remedies are discretionary and tailored to the specific circumstances of each case. This discretion allows judges to craft remedies that achieve justice, but it also introduces a level of uncertainty and subjectivity. For example, when deciding whether to grant an injunction, a court must consider factors such as the balance of convenience, the potential harm to both parties, and the public interest. These factors require careful deliberation and judgment, as the outcome can have far-reaching consequences. The discretionary nature of equitable remedies in non-military jurisdictions is both a strength and a challenge, as it allows for flexibility but also requires a high degree of judicial wisdom. Equity and statutory law. The interaction between equity and statutory law is another area where jurisdictional challenges arise. In non-military jurisdictions, courts must often reconcile equitable principles with statutory provisions, which may sometimes conflict. When statutory law prescribes specific remedies or procedures, courts must determine whether and how equity can be applied to achieve a just outcome. For instance, in cases where statutory law limits the available remedies, a court may need to consider whether an equitable remedy, such as an injunction or specific performance, is appropriate. This requires a careful analysis of the statutory language, legislative intent, and the underlying principles of equity. The challenge lies in ensuring that equity complements, rather than contradicts, statutory law, while upholding the principles of justice and fairness. Segment 4. Equity in Admiralty and Maritime Law. Equity's influence extends beyond traditional civil courts and into the realm of admiralty and maritime law. Although often associated with military contexts, admiralty and maritime law also operate within non-military jurisdictions, particularly in matters involving commercial shipping, navigation, and international trade. Equity plays a vital role in resolving disputes in this specialized area of law, where the rigid application of legal principles may not suffice. The role of equity in admiralty courts. Admiralty courts, which handle cases related to maritime activities, have historically exercised equitable jurisdiction alongside their legal powers. This dual role allows these courts to grant equitable remedies in cases where legal remedies are inadequate or inappropriate. For example, in cases involving maritime lines, equitable principles are often applied to determine the priority of claims against a vessel, ensuring that creditors are treated fairly. In addition, admiralty courts may grant injunctions to prevent the departure of a vessel involved in a legal dispute, thereby preserving the status quo until the case is resolved. The flexibility of equitable remedies is particularly important in maritime contexts, where the unique nature of the assets and the international dimensions of the disputes require tailored solutions. Equitable doctrines in maritime law. Several equitable doctrines are frequently invoked in maritime law, reflecting the need for fairness and justice in resolving complex disputes. One such doctrine is general average, an ancient principle of maritime law that requires all parties involved in a sea voyage to proportionally share any losses resulting from voluntary sacrifices made for the common good. For example, if a ship's cargo is jettisoned to save the vessel during a storm, the owners of the saved cargo must contribute to the losses of those whose cargo was sacrificed. This doctrine is inherently equitable, as it distributes losses in a fair and just manner, rather than allowing one party to bear the entire burden. Another important doctrine is salvage, which rewards those who voluntarily assist in saving a vessel or its cargo from peril. Salvage claims are assessed based on the value of the saved property and the risk involved in the salvage operation. The equitable nature of salvage law ensures that salvors are fairly compensated for their efforts, while also discouraging opportunistic behaviour that could lead to unnecessary risks. Equity in international maritime disputes. Equity's role in maritime law extends to the international arena, where disputes often involve parties from different countries and legal systems. In such cases, equitable principles provide a common framework for resolving conflicts, particularly when national laws may be inadequate or conflicting. For instance, in cases involving the collision of vessels from different countries, admiralty courts may apply equitable principles to determine liability and apportion damages. The international nature of maritime law requires a flexible and fair approach, which equity is uniquely suited to provide. Segment 5. Case studies in non-military equity jurisprudence. To fully appreciate the application of equity in non-military jurisdictions, it is instructive to examine specific case studies where equitable principles have played a decisive role. These cases illustrate the power of equity to achieve just outcomes, even in the most complex and challenging legal scenarios. Case Study 1. Injunctions in environmental law. One notable example of equity in non-military jurisdictions is the use of injunctions in environmental law. In the case of Friends of the Earth, Inc. v. Laidlaw Environmental Services, Inc., the US Supreme Court addressed the issue of whether a private party could seek an injunction to prevent environmental harm caused by a polluting company. In this case, the plaintiffs, an environmental advocacy group, sought an injunction to stop Laidlaw from discharging pollutants into a river, arguing that monetary damages would not be sufficient to remedy the harm. The court upheld the injunction, emphasizing the importance of equitable relief in preventing ongoing and future environmental damage. This case demonstrates how equity can be used to protect public interests, such as the environment, in non-military jurisdictions. The injunction provided a flexible and effective remedy that addressed the unique circumstances of the case, ensuring that justice was served. Case Study 2. Specific performance in real estate transactions. Another significant example is the application of specific performance in real estate transactions. In the case of Van Horn v. Fonda, an 18th century case from New York, the court ordered specific performance of a contract for the sale of land. The buyer had fully performed their obligations under the contract, but the seller refused to transfer the property. The court found that monetary damages would not adequately compensate the buyer, as the land was unique and had special value to the buyer. As a result, the court ordered the seller to complete the transaction, demonstrating the power of equity to enforce agreements and ensure fairness in contractual relationships. This case highlights the importance of specific performance as an equitable remedy in non-military jurisdictions, particularly in cases where the subject matter of the contract is unique and irreplaceable. Case Study 3. Constructive trusts in cases of fraud. Constructive trusts are another area where equity plays a crucial role in non-military jurisdictions. In the case of Beatty v. Guggenheim Exploration Company, the New York Court of Appeals addressed the issue of whether a constructive trust could be imposed on shares of stock obtained through fraud. The plaintiff, Beatty, had been defrauded into selling his shares at a significantly undervalued price. The court found that the defendant, Guggenheim, had acted in bad faith and unjustly enriched himself at Beatty's expense. As a result, the court imposed a constructive trust, requiring Guggenheim to hold the shares in trust for Beatty and transfer them back to him. This case illustrates how equity can be used to remedy situations where legal remedies would be insufficient to address the harm caused by fraudulent behaviour. The imposition of a constructive trust ensured that the defendant could not profit from his wrongdoing and that justice was ultimately served. Conclusion: as we have explored today, equity plays a vital role in non-military jurisdictions, offering remedies and principles that ensure justice is done in cases where the strict application of law might otherwise result in unfair outcomes. From injunctions to specific performance, and from equitable estoppel to constructive trusts, equity provides the flexibility and discretion needed to address the complexities of modern legal disputes. Moreover, the challenges of applying equity in non-military jurisdictions, such as issues of jurisdiction, the exercise of equitable discretion, and the interplay between equity and statutory law, highlight the importance of judicial wisdom and experience in administering justice. As we conclude this episode, I encourage you to reflect on the power and importance of equity in our legal system. In a world where legal issues are increasingly complex and multifaceted, equity remains a crucial tool for ensuring that justice is not only done, but seen to be done. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to our next discussion, where we will continue our exploration of equity jurisprudence and its application.